So is there like a time and a place for it, or how does that work for you?
It's kind of changed a little over the years. I've always been a hat guy. Going back to when I was a kid, I loved all the pictures of my grandfather walking around in his fedora, back in the late 40s and through the 50s. And Sinatra and Humphrey Bogart are probably two of the coolest people ever to have walked the planet. So it's hard not to be into hats.
The intersection of good drinks, good music, and good times. This is Hops and Spirits Bar Conversations.
Merry Christmas, happy holidays. I hope you're having a great December. We got a great episode for you this week. For our conversation, we welcome country artist, songwriter. He's got a brand new album coming out in February, Jarrod Dickenson. He's in a cool spot to tell us all about that record and his journey so far. And for our tasting notes, we welcome in Kevin Patterson to talk about those non-seasonal seasonals that we just love to have no matter the time of year. A lot of great conversations as always. And don't forget to check out our neat and mixed reviews. They're on our YouTube page, Facebook page for those full reviews. And if you want the shorter ones, check us out on Instagram and TikTok. Let's not waste any more time and get into the show.
Did you know Hops and Spirits is more than just this podcast? Check out hopspirits.com for our latest episode release, past episodes, interviews with interesting folks in the alcohol industry, and so much more. Just go to hopspirits.com. Feel free to wait until this podcast is done.
We're back again with, as he calls himself, Lexington's professional drunk. It's Kevin Patterson. He's a national beer judge, cicerone. He's also the manager of the Beer Trap and Craft Beer Store and Bar in Lexington. And Kevin, thank you for sharing some knowledge with us again.
Well, thank you. And it is the most professional drunk.
I knew I was going to forget something.
And apparently the second favorite bartender in Lexington. I was part of a competition back in the spring, and I was declared the second most popular bartender in Lexington. So you can include first loser to that list of accolades.
I don't want to do that. That would hurt. That would just not be nice of me for someone that is so kind to talk craft beer with us. And we're talking craft beer. We've talked about all these winter styles, barrel aged beers, stouts, porters, and the funkiness of those that come around the wintertime. But I don't know about you, but I tend to still enjoy a sour or a light beer in the winter. And I feel like the non-seasonal or out of season beer drinkers are more common now than they ever were.
Yeah, they were. And there's a little bit of worry for those that really do like the summer beers, the hazy IPA sitting by the pool, and the sour ales has gotten really popular. Well, the good news is it's taken about 100 and something years, but people have finally figured out that HVACs work. That whenever you walk into a room, a public room like a bar or even your own home, that first beer, might be a little bit heavier, might be a little bit more seasonal because you just came in out of the cold. If it's snowing outside, you probably don't want a light lager. So certainly come in, warm up with something a little stronger, a little heavier, and kind of enjoy yourself. But eventually that 68 to 72 degree room is going to seep in. Osmosis works, folks, I promise. So once your body acclimates, then you're free to drink whatever you want. And so the flavors of those sours or IPAs or, whatever kind of blonde ale that's out there, you can still drink those. And I think brewers have never forgotten that. They've never forgotten that you're allowed to drink anything you want, anytime you want. And one of the fun things about that notion is brewers have sort of said, well, if it is winter or if it is deep fall, people do want a stronger beer, but they still want sour. Well, let's just give them a stronger sour. So you get brewers like Untitled Arts and Urban Artifact, and they will start churning out some of these sours. They're not those light 4 or 5% sours like Berliner Weiss or Goses. Now they're stronger, they're fortified, and they're a lot heavier, and they will go 10% or higher. So you can actually have those strong sours that that you're familiar with, the flavor wise, but the power pack to really warm up that tummy the way you expect to during the wintertime. And IPAs are the same way. Just because you like hazy IPAs, you don't have to bury them and then pull them back out in the spring. They're going to be available year round. There will be some standard strength, but look for more strong ones to be on the market as well. The Imperial Hazy IPAs, the Triple Hazy IPAs. So those are going to be out there alive and well, and they do the same thing. They give you this really strong IPA flavor. You may lose a little bit of the drinkability, the dryness, crispness, or refreshment, but what you're going to be rewarded with is more flavor, more texture, a little bit more body, and that flavor that's so common to you. One of the things that I think that gets overlooked in the beer industry is when flavors get really, really bold, like most craft beers do anymore. And you don't have to be 10, 12, 13% alcohol to do this. The palate fatigue comes on so quickly that sometimes it doesn't matter what we want next. It just can't be the same thing. And so people struggle with this a little bit because they feel like, well, I like this kind of beer, I almost have to drink it. No, you don't. There's a reason why some stores, they will sell individual bottles. Not necessarily that we're trying to tickle your fancy by letting you just mix and match and have fun, but we recognize the fact that these are not light lagers or American lagers. You can't just drink 4 or 5 of them in a row and feel like you can tolerate another. So when you get finished with one flavor, it's very likely you're going to want another flavor. And sometimes it doesn't matter what it is. It just doesn't want to be like the last one. So that's another reason why brewers were said, well, people do want strong beers. It's wintertime, springtime, but let's also give people a variety. And so that's the reason why they've held on to these IPAs, sour ales, even like cream ales. I've seen them 10% alcohol with bourbon barrels and vanilla and cinnamon. So there's not really any lifestyle that's really off limits, except unless you're talking about like an American light lager or something.
Well, you could barrel age that maybe. You just never know. You could do a little bit of fun. But I also like to. I feel like the brewers are. You mentioned there's all those sours and there's maybe even a Kolsch or something. But what they've done is they've maybe gone toward the season and picked out like I think here in Lexington, Blue Stallion. They got a Mayberry Pie sour, which is almost like it tastes like the pie. You get the cinnamon, the graham cracker, but you also get that berry in there, and you can kind of play with those flavors to, like we said on the last episode, you're getting those flavors of like, oh my gosh, that's grandma's pie that she would make every time around the holidays. And now I feel like you see those in those lighter styles that are just quite tasty.
Yeah, those accessory grains, the adjuncts, those flavor additives, the extracts, they're not just limited to pastry stouts. If you have a beer that's in the summertime and you do the vanilla, lactose kind of cereal treatment on the sour ale, you're going to call it a smoothie. But whenever the tide turns and you're getting into fall, like you said, you're going to add those extracts that remind you of pie crust, of croissants, or of donut. And then you're going to layer that with some other kind of fruit flavors, and those can be natural. But at some point, they're all going to pull together inside the bottle, inside the can, or maybe inside the conditioning tank before you get to that point. And then you're going to call it almost like a pastry type sour. And so that term that a couple of years ago, pastry was only relegated to stouts. Now we're starting seeing people, they want pastry sours. And so it's the same kind of treatment. It's just a different base beer. And it's all permissible. It's all very clever.
It like we said, it's amazing what has happened with technology, how things have gone, and also back in the day, they had to make beers at certain times of the year because we didn't have all the cool things that we do now, such as storage tanks and ways to make sure beer can stay good all year round. And I'm very thankful for that.
Yeah, apparently there's something to technology, So, but yeah, it just gives brewers another tool to kind of work with to find out what customers really want this time of year, and are their palates trending a different direction? Is the seasons affecting that? Or is it just all palate driven? People want what people want.
I think that last one might be the nail, hitting the nail on the head. And as you have said too, you will most likely go into these breweries and see stuff that you would see other times of the year because they want to make sure they have something for everyone. And that is really cool to see. And Kevin, it's really cool to have you, and I appreciate you sharing some more knowledge with us.
Jonathan, thank you very much. It's been fun.
Check out Hops and Spirits on social media at Hops Spirits, all one word, on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and Twitter. You can also find Hops and Spirits on YouTube and at hopspirits.com.
Joining us here on the Bar Conversations for our conversation, he's a multi-talented Americana artist. He has a new album coming in February called Big Talk, and he's released a few singles to give you a taste of what to expect. Welcome in, Jarrod Dickenson.
Thanks for having me. It's nice to be here.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time. And, since I see that lovely bar behind you, I've just got a nice picture here, in my living room area. I got to ask, what are you drinking tonight? Anything good?
Well, yeah, I don't know if you can see that. I'm currently drinking Michter's Straight Rye, which would be kind of my one of my go-tos anyway. In terms of American whiskey, I tend to be a rye guy over bourbon. And yeah, it's a Michter's night.
I like it. I like it. See, both of us are rye guys because I'm from Castle and Key, little restoration rye,
Nice. Very
batch
good.
three from 2021. So
I
two
like it.
rye guys. I like it.
There
Now
you go. Gonna stick
now
together.
you mentioned that that's kind of your go-to. Do you have any others that you kind of go for, or are you a Scotch, Irish whiskey guy? What else do you dabble in?
Yes.
All the
Um,
above.
yeah. I mean, I'm a big single malt guy. Love, kind of the smokier side of things. So Lagavulin would be one of my favorites. Lafroig is always nice, like sipping on a campfire. Ardbeg is great. A lot of Irish whiskeys too. In fact, let's see if I can show you this. I don't know if you can see that.
I can,
Uh,
yeah.
it's
Killowen?
one of my yeah, Killowen. It's one of my more recent discoveries on the Irish side. Kind of smaller distillery, and I think relatively new in the grand scheme. But they're making some really amazing stuff. This is their 6-year-old small batch rum and raisin finished, uh,
Ooh.
which is absolutely stunning. And yeah, one of my favorite discoveries of recent days.
I'm a
Yeah,
sucker for a rum cask finish. You put anything in a rum cask, and it's hard to beat that.
it's absolutely, yeah. Couldn't agree more.
So now, have you been able to go over to Scotland and Ireland and those places to check out anything?
Yeah, well, I'm married to an Irish girl,
Oh, so
so
yeah, it's required.
absolutely, yeah. So we're over there pretty regularly, and touring takes us all over the UK and all over Scotland, and so yeah, been to Scotland a bunch of times. Absolutely love it there, and Ireland, of course, is incredible.
Now, when you're touring and doing stuff like that with your shows, I noticed you have a certain look. I feel like there's always the hat. You got the hat going. But as we're talking right now, there's no hat. So is there like a time and a place for it, or how does that work for you?
It's kind of changed a little over the years. I've always been a hat guy. Going back to when I was a kid, I loved all the pictures of my grandfather walking around in his fedora, back in the late 40s and through the 50s. And Sinatra and Humphrey Bogart are probably two of the coolest people ever to have walked the planet. So it's hard not to be into hats. And yeah, it's been kind of a part of my thing for as long as I've had a thing, I guess. Um, but I used to wear a hat every day, all the time, anywhere, and still wear it a lot. Although it's funny, living in New York, as I did for a good while, I worked in a hat store when I wasn't touring, so I was wearing hats all day, every day, selling hats to people, talking about hats. And then once we ended up moving back down to Nashville, it seemed like everyone was wearing hats. And so it kind of, I'm not going to say put me off because I still love hats and I still wear them all the time. But just going around town, it was kind of like, well, I don't want to look like all of you guys, I'm,
You gotta
we're not
stand
the
out,
same.
right?
Yeah. So it's kind of become at this point more of a stage thing, for the most part. But I still have a great affinity for good headwear.
There is something about a nice hat. And now, do you know any tricks to putting them on, or is it just straight on, good to go?
Well, never straight.
Well,
It's
a
always got
little
to be
sideways, a little
a
sideways. Sorry.
little bit. I mean, Sinatra said, "Cock your hat, angles are attitudes," and I think those are words to live by.
I like it. That's a smart thing. Now, you mentioned you get to travel a little bit with touring and so forth, and I know you've been doing a little bit of that lately. Any favorite spots that you've been able to visit and get back to?
Yeah, man. After 2+ years of not doing it, it's been great to get back out on the road. It's not quite like it was pre-pandemic, but we're getting there. Um, as far as places, I mean, we love to go everywhere and anywhere. But as far as kind of a new or recent place, we went to Palm Springs for the first time back in September, which was very cool. Everybody was very laid back, and we love mid-century architecture and furniture and that sort of thing. And I mean, it's just everywhere in Palm Springs. So we were like kids in a candy shop. Yeah, that was a very cool experience. It was very recent.
Well, and I was going to say, it doesn't sound like you're exactly like a straight tourist either when you're going these places. I feel like you like to do some exploring and getting off the beaten path.
Yeah, if we can. I mean, when you're touring, or at least when we're touring, the way that we do it, there's very little time to explore, sadly. It's kind of the old joke of you've been all around the world, but all you've seen is a venue and a hotel room. And often that is the case. When we're able to, we do try to, find a good bar, good pub, good restaurant. Not necessarily in the, very touristy part of town. If you can avoid it, if you can find someone to tell you, oh, here's where you really want to go, we'll try to do that. But yeah, when you're on the road, it's tough. Time is not always your friend.
I was going to say, you stay busy. You go from place to place. I was wondering if you ever did get to explore much, but it has to still be nice to be having a pretty good travel partner and your wife, Claire.
Yeah, absolutely. Not many people get to do that with their spouse, and we're very lucky. And yeah, we enjoy traveling. We both enjoy traveling, both enjoy being on the road. We love getting to do it together, so we're pretty lucky.
Well, and then you all have a song together. I mean, a literal duet. I think back on your last album, Your Heart Belongs to Me. How much did that mean to y'all, and how much fun is it kind of being able to sing that together?
Yeah, that's it's definitely become a thing over the last handful of years. It's funny, when I wrote that song, we were still dating. We dated long distance for 3.5 years. I was in New York.
I was gonna say, and by long distance, you actually mean like there was a sea in between y'all, right?
Yeah, 3,000 miles in an ocean. It's pretty big distance. And yeah, so we did that for 3.5 years. Been married for over 7 years now. But when I wrote that, we were still dating, and we weren't performing together really at that point. In fact, we dated for about a year before I even knew that she could sing. It just happened one day where I think she was visiting New York, and I was probably sitting in the apartment playing on some song that I was working on. And just all of a sudden she started to sing a harmony to it. And I was like, where the hell has that been? Where you been hiding that? And so I've been, from that point slowly was trying to convince her to get up on stage and sing with me, which she was reluctant to at first. But she's fallen in love with it. And that song, when I wrote it, I always heard it as a duet in my head. But we recorded it first for a little EP called Songs from Willow Street. And she didn't want to sing it at that point. And so on that version, which you can find if you look really hard, it's just me singing both parts and kind of singing a harmony on the verses that she would later sing. But it didn't take long before she got up on stage and made the song what it is. And it's definitely become a special thing for us. And I think the crowds have reacted to it. We've had a lot of people who've incredibly wanted to use it as, like a first dance song at their wedding or something like that, which is amazing, and you never expect that kind of thing when you're writing a song, but it's cool to see how they kind of take on a life of their own.
Well, and you've been able to get back to kind of making some new music after a tough stretch for you the last few years. How nice is that to have that feeling again? Yeah,
it's incredible to finally be getting new music out there. It's been a journey, but yeah, to finally be sharing this music and to be able to now get out on the road and tour it, it's incredible. It's an amazing thing to be getting back to it.
I mean, were you ever worried that it was gonna not be able to happen again with just label issues, other things in life issues, things like that?
There was never a point where I thought, this may end, I might stop doing this, or maybe I'll do something different. That was never a thought. But we definitely kind of hit some roadblocks there for a few years, with a story old as time, signed a record deal that didn't turn out so great, and had a long fight with that label to get the rights back to my last record, which we did do. But it created kind of a log jam, and it meant that all the momentum we had built up to that point, everything just came to a grinding halt, and it's hard to get momentum back, and so it's been a journey, and it's been a struggle, but I think the new tunes on this record reflect that. I think there's an air of defiance in these songs that wouldn't have been there if I didn't have a legal battle with an old record label. It's added another layer to my writing, to my work, and just to who I am and who we are. So yeah, I don't think doing anything else or thinking like, oh, we may never get back to this, that was never a consideration, but it took longer than we wanted to get back to this point.
Well, there's a silver lining everywhere, and when you're talking about impacts of things, you're from Waco down in Texas. What impacted growing up and living there, and then obviously being able to move around a little bit in later life and see some different places?
Yeah, I grew up in Waco. When I lived there, it wasn't a terribly hip place to be. If you wanted to
out in no man's land.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of, it wasn't like small town, middle of the nowhere kind of thing. Like we had 2 movie theaters, so we weren't a small town, but there wasn't a lot going on either. So if you wanted to see a gig or anything kind of arts related, you either had to go down to Austin or you had to go up to Dallas. And thankfully, both were only an hour and a half away in opposite directions. So it wasn't like we were deprived of all of that. But growing up in Waco, it did mean that if you wanted to do that kind of thing, you had to leave, and that's what I did. I went to Austin, went to school at UT, hung around, kind of cut my teeth in the Austin music scene. Which is a great place to kind of figure out who you are as an artist and a writer, or at least it was then. There's a million music venues, and it's a very welcoming place. So it was a great place to kind of develop and figure things out, and then you kind of push yourself out of the nest and see where you can go from there.
Well, and what music were you growing up on that you loved to have on, and then maybe even just influenced you and kind of as the artist you've become?
Yeah, well, I grew up with an old hippie as a dad, which isn't a bad thing. So really, for me, growing up, my music was his music that he grew up with. I was always digging through his record collection. So I was listening to the Beatles, the Stones, the Who, Simon and Garfunkel, Tom Petty, Jim Croce, Neil Young. That was my musical education, and really what was on the radio in the 90s whenever I was growing up. Really, I was aware of it because I would hear it, and wherever you are, the mall or your friend's car. But it wasn't what I was into. I was into the blues, and I was into rock and roll. And so that was kind of my jumping off point. And then down the road, I kind of got into some of the Texas songwriters like Guy Clark, Townes Van Zandt, and then that kind of changed things all over again. And then around that same time, I got into people like Tom Waits, which is, a whole other thing. So yeah, it's a fairly varied musical education, I guess, but most of it is from my dad's generation.
Well, and it seems to, that sound has come through a little bit in what you've been working on. I feel like you got the new album Big Talk coming on February 3rd. How excited are you to share that? Because I've gotten to listen to a little bit of it, and I must say I'm a fan. Home Again is a favorite that I've gotten to listen to, and there's some fun things on there.
Thanks very much, man. I'm over the moon to have it out there, or coming out. We got to make that here in Nashville with a bunch of friends. One of my closest friends, a guy named JP Ruggieri, was playing guitar all over it, and he played on the last record, Ready the Horses. He's a phenomenal singer-songwriter in his own right, but just an outrageously good guitar player. So it's always fun making music with him. We had Jono Ricks of the Wood Brothers. He's playing drums and keyboards on the record. Ted Pecchio is playing bass. He played with Doyle Bramhall, Tedeschi Trucks, a million others. And that was kind of the core band. And then Claire, of course, singing harmonies on just about everything. And then Home Again that you mentioned, I took a chance and asked if Oliver Wood and Jono would sing with me on that tune, not really expecting them to say yes, and thankfully they both did, which is a real thrill to have their two voices on that tune, and definitely made it a special thing.
Well, and you went the self-produced route with this, and like you said, you're able to get some really cool friends and some great musicians to help out. I mean, why kind of go down that route this go around?
Yeah, well, to be fair, I produced the last record too, Ready the Horses. This one was a little different though. Ready the Horses was very much a live record. We had finished doing a 21-date tour in the UK, and the day that tour finished, we drove down to Eastbourne, which is kind of southeast coast of England, and we all piled into the studio, and for about 5 days we cut that record pretty much live, added a few things, background vocals and that kind of thing, but for the most part what you're hearing on the record is just what we played live in the room. This one is still a live record at its core. We're all playing and singing together, but because of the pandemic, really, when that hit in March of 2020, I all of a sudden had all this time on my hands. And so I started kind of making demos of all of these tunes that I was considering for the next record. And because I had time to sit down and really work on it, rather than it being a very in the moment, kind of off the cuff sort of thing, I found myself writing guitar hooks and different melodies that I wanted to incorporate with different instruments. And so it became, not a totally polished and thought out thing before we went into the studio. There was still plenty of room for improvisation, but there were a lot of things that I knew, okay, I want to do this on this song, rather than let's get everybody together, play it live, and let's see what we have at the end of it. There were certain things that I knew going in, okay, I want to do this, I want to do that. So it was cool to do it in a different way and see it take shape. And I'm very, very pleased with the way it turned out.
Well, and then, the first track that you shared with everyone was Long Hard Look, with some great lines in there, which I'm curious about how that one came about and what you were hoping for with it.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you've noticed, but there's some strange shit going on in the world right now.
No, what are you talking about?
Definitely not. I mean, that was written, when was that written? Probably late 2019, I guess, is when that song was written, which there was a different person in office at that point. News cycles were hard to stomach, the things that were happening on an hourly basis, and just the way people were at each other's throats nonstop, and there was no room for hearing anyone else's point of view, and a lot of kind of the darkest side of humanity was bubbling up to the top again, and I think people were feeling emboldened to kind of let their darker nature out, and that's all that song's about, is trying to say, hey, don't be a dick. Maybe think about treating people. What's the golden rule? Treat people the way you want to be treated. It's as simple as that. But trying to find a humorous and a way to say that hopefully people would take to heart.
Well, I mean, the line, are you picking up your brother or are you knocking him down? I mean, I think no matter when you listen to this song, that'll always resonate with you.
Yeah, I hope so.
Now, the latest thing that you've been able to drop is Prefer to Lose. And for those that have watched the video, they might notice the background. It looks very similar. You shot it at the home bar.
Yeah, what's he doing on the film set? Yeah, we didn't really make this known beforehand, but we decided to film that in our own little basement bar in our house, which we have painstakingly created over the last year or so. And yeah, it's when we moved into this house, this room was kind of no man's land. It was the most useless room in the house. It's a basement that you can kind of walk out into the backyard, so it's only partially below ground. But this was sort of a useless space. And one thing that Claire and I have often said was, we can't find a bar in Nashville that we like. And I know that's gonna piss some people off. But what we mean is, we can't find, a place that feels like an Irish pub or an English pub, where there's not a giant TV on the wall and people are there just to chat and talk to each other, and it's, vibey and welcoming. So we thought, might as well just make it, and it's turned into one of our favorite places to hang out. And so we've been trying to find, bar memorabilia and little family photos that we put up of our grandparents and just things that we want to be surrounded by. And yeah, it's turned into a pretty cool spot. And so we thought, well, why don't we film this video down here? And yeah, we're pretty pleased with how it turned out.
Well, I love that, and I was going to ask if it was easy to get your wife on board with the bar, but it sounds like she was right there with you, like, let's do it.
I mean, she's Irish, so it'd be harder to get her out of the bar than to convince her to build a bar.
That is fair, and the service should be pretty good at this one, and it's a short drive home.
That's it. It is stumbling distance to our bed.
Which is the perfect place for a bar. Now, are you guys the ones that like to host when you're home and do stuff and invite friends over? Or I'm guessing that Irish hospitality has to come through.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we love having people over. Obviously, through the pandemic, it's been a little tricky. And we only moved here about a year ago. So we haven't had that many people over at this point, but we're definitely looking forward to having friends over and christening the bar with a lot of good nights.
Well, I was going to say that's the best way to do it, and it looks like you've worked on the collection too, for what you can show off behind you. What whiskeys you got and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, this is a drop in the bucket. That's just what we could fit on that back wall. But we've got some good stuff. There's the Michter's that I'm drinking. There's a Willet 4-year rye. I don't know if you're a fan of Willet or not, but I think they're pretty good. Yamazaki 12, which was a gift from a friend, which is one of my favorites. Love a lot of the Japanese stuff, and that's definitely high up on the list. Love the Nikka coffee malt and coffee grain too. Those are both really good. Bottle of Lagavulin there. There's a bottle of Blanton's, but to be honest, and don't get me wrong, like Blanton's is great. But I found that maybe a year or two ago, and it was kind of at the prices that you could get it at 4 or 5 years ago. And I thought, I'm just going to buy one of these because at some point, somebody's going to want to give me a lot of money for it on Facebook Marketplace, and I'm going to need that money. So anyone out there who is looking for a bottle of Blanton's and wants to give me a ridiculous sum of money for it, I got you covered. What else do we have? Another Irish whiskey, Blue Spot. Do you know that one?
I don't know that one.
They have, green spot, yellow spot, they're more common ones, but that was a gift from my brother-in-law, one of my brother-in-laws. And it's really, really good. Let's see. Oh, there's a cool one there. Heaven's Door, which I'm sure you're familiar with, Bob Dylan's.
Yeah.
So
it took me a second. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a collaboration that they did with Redbreast of Ireland. And it's a really interesting and delicious whiskey.
I love the fact that it's not just like one thing. You go everywhere because, the Japanese do it slightly different. Scotch whiskey's completely different. I mean, Irish whiskey's different. What we make here is different. I love that your palate can go worldwide and that you also open the bottles and drink it.
Oh man, what good are they if you don't crack them open?
Exactly.
Aside from Blanton's, that one is just to make me money at some point.
That is just that's something to make it look good, and then that's an investment.
Yeah, but no, they're meant to be enjoyed for sure.
Now, what else is to be enjoyed is just being able to listen to good music, and for you and what you've been able to accomplish over the years, from your first album to Ready the Horses in 2020 to Big Talk here in 2023. Has your sound kind of changed over the year? I know obviously the lyrics kind of have, because I think I read either on the press release announcing the new album how this kind, gentle-hearted guy kind of become a come out punching. But how has that sound and everything changed for you over the years?
Yeah, I think it's only natural for artists to evolve and what they do to change. The earliest stuff was very, very folksy, very, very much like a traveling troubadour storytelling kind of thing. And I still do that. And I still love that, but I don't see the point in making the same record twice, I look at all of my heroes, and they all changed and evolved and tried to push themselves and stretch and grow from one album to the next. You listen to a Beatles record and you listen to the one that came after it, and they're vastly different. You listen to a Tom Waits album or a Paul Simon record or whoever. They all keep pushing and all keep trying to get better at their craft and at the end of the day, it's about doing whatever is going to make you happy too, and doing the same old thing, for me, I would find pretty boring. So yeah, I do think my sound has changed, and hopefully it will continue to do that. What direction it will go next, I don't know. But I hope I never stop growing and changing and evolving.
I mean, that's part of the journey, and it's a fun part of the journey to see where you end up being taken to next. And I feel like too, for you kind of mentioned it a little bit. When you were writing a lot of the songs on this one, times were a little different. What's that process like for you writing? Is it kind of just time and place and how you're feeling? Is it ideas, experiences? I mean, how does that all go for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's all of the above. Every song is different. For me, it usually starts with an idea, whether it's a single line or just something that I want to talk about or explore. But how they come together is different every time. Sometimes it's music first and then lyrics come later. Sometimes it's the other way around. Sometimes they're kind of all spill out at the same time. Yeah, I haven't figured out the I haven't cracked the code to to figure out how to do it easily. But I'm not sure I'd enjoy it if it was easy. So yeah, it's still exciting and mysterious, and you just hope that the next one comes along.
I was gonna say, I think everyone has always said, if you can figure out how to bottle that up, let us know, because it's not something that always comes easy, and it's not like you can manufacture a hit perfectly every time. And as you kind of wrap up, and get into this new year with the new album, what are you hoping for in 2023 besides that new album that gets to drop?
Yeah, well, most excited about getting the music out there, but then touring. We're eager to hit the road hard. Like I said, after 2+ years of not getting to do it, being sidelined, we're excited to get out there and live out of our suitcases again. So that's it. That's what we want to do. We want to be as busy as we can be, go to as many places as we can, and see where it takes us from there.
Well, it sounds like you got an exciting year ahead of you, folks. If you get the chance, listen to everything that's come off of Big Talk, and also be prepared for when it comes, because there's a lot of other great things there. And you can find more on Jarrod at JarrodDickenson.com and find him on social media. And Jarrod, this was a blast, and thanks for sharing a drink with me.
Man, thanks for having me. Cheers.
Find more from Hops and Spirits at hopspirits.com.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.